our time is unfortunately drawing short, but I do want to return to a question about that misinformation advisory that you put out yesterday. You talked sort of to social media companies and what you see as their responsibility in this. Have you heard anything from Facebook? Have you set up a meeting with Mark Zuckerberg? What happens from here?
Well, one thing I should tell you, Paige, is that we have been talking with and working with many of these companies over the last many months. This is my approach to this has always been that, when you've got an all of society challenge like this, you need an all of society response, and you've got to work with everyone, who can be part of the solution here. And so we want to continue working with organizations, including technology companies. But what we also want to do is to make sure that there's accountability here, that there's transparency in what people are doing, that we are not just taking measures that sound good, but ones that are actually having impact in substantially reducing the challenge of misinformation. And that's why, while we'll continue to dialogue with partners across the board, we won't shy away from being honest about whether we think sufficient progress is being made. And that's the case, with the technology companies in particular. Paige, one last thing I'll share just in general about COVID, which I think doesn't get talked about very often, is a hidden toll of this pandemic, and that's a toll on our mental health and well-being. I'm really worried about this, Paige, because when I think about the months ahead, I think about the fall as when kids will be back in school, when many employers are looking to bring their staff back, in a fashion similar to how we were in 2019. I worry that we may try to snap back into 2019 without fully appreciating the burden of this pandemic, without appreciating the stress and strain it's caused in people's lives. There's a reason we're seeing anxiety and depression rates go up during this pandemic. There's a reason that clinicians are burning out at such high rates, that public health workers and parents and caregivers are expressing high levels of depression and anxiety and PTSD and suicidal ideation. And so I think in this moment, we have an opportunity to rethink our approach to mental health and well-being, certainly at a policy level to make mental health care more accessible, to invest more in prevention, certainly at an institutional level to make sure that schools and employers are doing what they can to help support students and employees with their mental health, but especially at a personal level, where we've had this stigma around mental health for a long time that's prevented people from admitting what they're struggling with. It's prevented them from coming forward and asking for help. But this pandemic, I think, has made many of us realize that we've all struggled in some way, shape, or form during the last year and a half. And if we can be honest about that, if we can reach out to others with some kindness and compassion, recognizing that this has been a tough time for all of us, then I hope we will start down a path of creating a foundation in society for doing better to care for the mental health and well-being of all of our brothers and sisters.
All important points, and certainly things to discuss at a later time. I just want to press you a little more, though, on the announcement you made yesterday. You have to know that the tech executives were watching that very closely and wondering, what that means for them, what the government is going to be putting pressure on in terms of trying to crack down on some of this stuff. Has Facebook reached out to you since then, and do you expect to have any conversations with them anytime soon?
Well, Paige, like I said, we've been in touch with many of the companies for months. I anticipate we'll continue to be in touch and to work with them to address the threat of misinformation. As Surgeon General, my job is to alert the country when there's a public health threat, to lay out pathways for action, and to convene the necessary players to take action that will solve these challenges. What my job is not is to make legislation or regulation. That is something that will leave certainly to Congress. But I anticipate we'll continue to work with technology companies, with educators, with healthcare providers, and with others who have a role to address the challenge of health misinformation.